Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, TOT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. I got a great show for you guys today. A lot of breaking news. So it's going to be one of those days we're going to talk a lot about the Michael Cohen situation. So a lot of very interesting news on that front, including some breaking news about some wiretapping. Oh, this is going to be great. So, look, we're going to talk about Giuliani basically imploding on Hannity. That's fun. We have, like I said, that interview. We got Donald Trump's response to that interview. We got his one of his defenders basically admitting, oh, right, yeah. So it turns out Trump's lawyers kind of suck. And yes, I agree with that. Fun. That's super fun. Then we got Hillary Clinton kind of getting it a little bit, but not really. I'm going to explain that when we get to that story. There's a recent interview that she went on that she talked about some of the voters. So, interesting. Then, is what we're going to do. We're going to talk finally good story here. There is a settlement in the case of the two black men that got arrested at a Starbucks. Interesting. So we got that. A lot of interesting stories, so we'll get to them. First, of course, I want to thank everybody for joining me today. And I want to ask you to please like and share the stream. Especially important to share the stream with everybody that you know to make sure the word gets out there for the people who don't get notifications. So it especially helps them. All right. So, anyway, also, if you want to help the show, Super Chat or Patreon, that helps us as well. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but hey, if you want to, do a Super Chat and have me read the comment, then, you can do that and help the show at the same time. So it's super cool for all of us. Anyway, that said, let's start with our first story. Let's talk about the wiretap. And here we go. So we have some breaking news about Michael Cohen and the investigation into Michael Cohen. According to NBC News, this is an exclusive that they had found. Federal agents have obtained a wiretap on President Trump's personal attorney, Michael Cohen, that had intercepted at least one call between a line associated with Michael Cohen and a line at the White House. So that's sort of the big reveal, right? So here you have just the fact that Cohen, it's revealed he has been wiretapped. That in itself is explosive. Now we also have the realization, or the revelation, I should say, of a call between Cohen and what we would assume to be Donald Trump. Now, two sources close to Trump's newest attorney, Rudy Giuliani, say that he learned that days after the raid, the president decided to make a call to Michael Cohen. Oh, hey, look, you're under investigation. You've just been raided by the FBI. I better call my lawyer, the one that has just been raided. It's not very smart, is it? No, that's stupid. That's really, really dumb. But again, that's Donald Trump. He did the same thing with Michael Flynn. Now, Michael Flynn got in trouble, and he's like, oh, I got to call Michael Flynn. Why can't I call Michael Flynn? I just want to call Mike. That's fascinating. Now, this time, unlike the Michael Flynn situation, he actually did get a call out to Cohen. Now, I wonder what was in that call. Now, Giuliani basically said, I told Trump after that happened, don't do that again because you don't know if federal investigators are going to be listening. We don't know. Now, look, if Cohen were smart, he wouldn't have said anything incriminating, right? And also if he hadn't flipped on Trump, which we don't know at this point, right? However, even if Cohen was restrained, that doesn't mean that Donald Trump was restrained. In fact, Donald Trump's the kind of guy who can't help but incriminate himself because he's so incredibly dumb. I mean, look, you just let him talk, and he's done this on numerous occasions. You just let him talk, and he will eventually get around to incriminating himself. The Lester Holt interview where he admitted, oh, yeah, I fired James Comey over the Russia investigation. That is a great example. So basically, he admitted to obstructing justice on national television. Again, the guy's an idiot. He's a colossal moron. I cannot believe he is president of the United States. Anyway, now, NBC has more details on this tap. They report that the tap was obtained in the weeks ahead of the raid on Cohen's office, home, and hotel room last month, where investigators obtained a slew of documents. Now, a lot of these documents, what we know, anyway, of these documents, is they're related to the payment made to Stormy Daniels. It's a $130,000 payment that Donald Trump swears he knew nothing about, or at least he did until recently. Oh, no, I didn't know anything about it, right? There was no payment. What are you talking about? Payment? I didn't know there was payment. Maybe Michael Cohen made a payment on his own, out of his own money, but I had nothing to do with it. Campaign had nothing to do with it, except that now he's on retainer, and that's how I was paying him back. Again, they can't help themselves. They're such pathological liars. My God. Now, in relation to this payment, here you have Stormy Daniels' lawyer, Michael Avenatti, basically confirming this news and saying, yeah, this happened, this wiretap happened, and it's related to my case. He also cited information that he had learned about this, that the wiretaps were not simply listening to the phone calls, but they also have his text messages. So you got your phone, you got the phone calls on tape, and then you've got the text messages too. Oh boy. So what prompted the raid, according to Avenatti, is that investigators had feared that information, the text messages and stuff, could be destroyed. Now, federal agents used that as the basis for obtaining their search warrants that were used to seize the Cohen's property back in April. So that's interesting, right? Now, why is this terrible news for Donald Trump and Michael Cohen? Well, I think Cohen's pretty obvious, right? Now, according to former U.S. Attorney Chuck Rosenberg, now an NBC News analyst, he says there's a high bar for having a wiretap approved. So that means they got to have evidence. Now, he said, quote, the affidavits are typically highly detailed and carefully vetted by experienced lawyers, in which case the wiretap must be approved by a federal judge. Rosenberg said that the wiretaps are usually approved for an investigation into a current crime and not solely for possible crimes that have been committed in the past. So understand that, right? While, yes, this is possible for crimes in the past, it's also mostly used when they think there's somebody that is currently committing a crime at this time, at this moment. In fact, he said, this is an exacting process where the government must demonstrate to a federal judge that there is an ongoing crime, and the judge has to look at the evidence collected so far and make a determination on whether or not to grant a wiretap. You know what?
Ladies and gentlemen, we got...
Wait. Just a minute. Maybe we've got Michael Cohen. However, if Cohen is going down, which it seems more and more likely by the day, the question is whether or not he's going to take Donald Trump down with him. And I think this is only going to fuel more questions about whether or not Cohen is or has flipped on Donald Trump. So we'll see. We'll see. Oh, good Lord. That's awesome. All right. Now, first, before I get into the next story, which is related to this, I do want to address the super chat that I just received here. Let me go over here for a second and address this because I thought this was very interesting. Sarah Witchman says, sorry if I got your name wrong. I'm terrible with names. Can I please cover the Jude Wininski 2 Santa Claus theory on a future show? It explains the Republican deficit spending very well. Actually, let me talk about that just for a minute here, because this is something that I had just recently, maybe not too recently, heard about, read about, and I was like, you know what? That makes all the sense in the world. So basically what it is, just to kind of wrap it up real quickly and kind of summarize it for you, is basically where the Republicans, after being crushed by Democrats, progressives in the New Deal, by the New Deal programs that are incredibly popular, they said, you know what? We got to stop being the quote-unquote bad guys, and we got to stop being, quote, fiscally responsible. Well, how do we do that? How do we win elections, and how do we, put forward our agenda, which serves mainly the rich? I know, here's what we're going to do. Instead of saying, oh, no, we need to rein in this and that and this and that, here's what we're going to do. We're going to, since we accuse the Democrats of giving out gifts all the time, we're going to give out our own gifts. Only this time, it's in the form of tax cuts. So we're going to spin this entire narrative, this entire mythology, that tax cuts will create jobs, that it will grow the economy, and that it will save you money in your paychecks, right? So we're going to come up with this. None of that is true. Yes, it maybe save you a couple of bucks on your taxes, but it's hardly noticeable. But what we're going to do is we're going to spin that, and we're going to say, hey, look, you guys, we're going to give you these things. So vote for us. We're going to give you tax cuts. We're going to save you money. And then that forced the Democratic Party, who, relies on bigger government programs, for example, like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, which, again, are super popular. It put the Democrats, like, they didn't know what to do. So they're like, well, we got to be fiscally responsible, right? So they've essentially taken the place of Republicans as attempting to be fiscally responsible. And they're saying, well, we have to trim deficits. So basically, and again, this is a little bit of a terrible summary, but it's kind of the gist of what's going on, is that the Republicans have said, well, instead of being, the people that have to be fiscally responsible, we're going to become a Santa Claus too. So we're going to basically promise all these tax cuts and stuff and say that they're going to help you get a better job. They're going to help you live better, all that stuff. If we just deregulate industry, then they're going to be able to give you a bonus and have more jobs. See? Isn't that great? We're giving you things. We're giving you things that you would like. And again, that has forced Democrats to no longer focus on those bigger programs, like expanding Social Security, like a universal income or a job guarantee program, things like that. Medicare for all is a perfect example. Well, we can't do that now because now we have to watch out for federal deficits created by Republicans. And so that's sort of the gist of the two Santas. Because the Democrats are the one Santa and the Republicans are the second one, and they're all giving out gifts, but they're giving out gifts to completely different people and completely different constituencies. So anyway, that's that basically in a nutshell. I'll probably have a better explanation if I decide to do the segment. But anyway, so that said, let's go into the next story. So a little bit of a tangent there. All right. So former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani is now one of Donald Trump's lawyers. And in one of his first public television appearances in that role, has already made Donald Trump's legal situation that much worse. Awesome. Now, on Wednesday, he sat down with Sean Hannity to talk about the situation with Michael Cohen and the $130,000 payment made to Stormy Daniels. And it's funny because, he sits down with somebody who's obviously a very accomplished adversarial journalist. No, he sits down with one of his buddies, who Sean Hannity's not going to give him a tough question whatsoever. And he really doesn't. But nonetheless, Giuliani still finds a way to fuck it up. And this is fantastic. Let's watch.
Are you concerned that that was paid for to manipulate the American people in the lead up to an election?
Isn't that closer to the mandate than Michael Cohen?
Why isn't that
having something?
Where's Mueller on that, sir?
Having something to do with paying some Stormy Daniels woman $130,000? I mean, which is going to turn out to be perfectly legal. That money was not campaign money. Sorry, I'm giving you a fact now that you don't know. It's not campaign money. No campaign finance violation. So
they funneled it through the law firm.
Funneled through a law firm, and the president repaid it.
Oh, I didn't know he did.
Yep.
There's no campaign finance law.
Zero.
So the president.
Just like Sean.
So this decision was made by.
Everybody was nervous about this from the very beginning. I wasn't. I knew how much money Donald Trump put into that campaign. I said, 130,000. He's going to do a couple of checks for 130,000. When I heard Cohen's retainer of 35,000, when he was doing no work for the president, I said, but that's how he's repaying. That's how he's repaying it, with a little profit and a little margin for paying taxes for Michael.
But do you know the president didn't know about this? I believe that's what
he didn't
Michael
know about the specifics of it, as far as I know. But he did know about the general arrangement that Michael would take care of things like this, like I take care of things like this for my clients. I don't burden them with every single thing that comes along. These are busy people.
Oh, no. Other people, I mean, they have to hire people to cover things like this, to take care of things like this. I've had to do it. Well, then, lock him up. Lock him up. Seriously, though. Oh, my God. So he says, look, this is, it's not campaign money. The president paid him back. Okay. So, look, if he paid him back, then that would appear that he would have to know about the payment in the first place. I mean, look, that means Donald Trump and Michael Cohen have been lying the entire time. Trump specifically, even up to last month, where he told reporters on Air Force One that he had no idea about the $130,000 payment at all. So Cohen paid that money, and Trump paid him back. And again, there's an admission here from Giuliani. But his whole thing before that is, I don't know, what payment? What payment? I didn't make any payment. It came out of Cohen. Cohen paid him from his own money, through the kindness of his own heart. And yet, here's Giuliani completely exploding that argument. He's taking that argument, and he's basically like, oh, yeah, that's a good argument. Gone. I mean, how do you pay someone back for a payment you supposedly knew nothing about? That doesn't happen. That's not how it works, okay? When somebody tells me that I owe them money, I want to know why. I want to know the details, right? And speaking of details, those happen to be incredibly important. A payment intended to protect his campaign from political damage could be a violation of campaign finance law. But wait a minute. Here's Giuliani out here saying, oh, it wasn't a campaign violation. Are you sure? Are you sure you're a lawyer? Did you get your lawyer degree out of a Cracker Jack box? What the fuck? God, he's an idiot. An idiot surrounded by idiots. Look. Here's how it works, right? Now, look, if you're a candidate, as Trump was at the time, you are permitted to spend an unlimited amount of your own money on your campaign. Now, that's an insane system. We live in an insane system. It's not necessarily a democracy anymore. It is an oligarchy. So here you go. You can run a political campaign, and you can pour, if you're a supposed billionaire, I laugh about that, you can pour millions of dollars into your own campaign. Again, insane system, but that's fine. It's how it works. And it's not fine, but under current law, it is fine. Now, the only stipulation is that any money that you pour into your own campaign has to be reported to the FEC, right? So that's how it's supposed to work, right? But your campaign cannot pay for certain things. You cannot use your campaign to pay off a porn star. That's not how you can do things, right? Or to pay back a lawyer for paying off a porn star. That is not how it works. Now, there's another contradiction here, and it comes from Cohen himself. Cohen had insisted that he used his own money and was not reimbursed. Now, we mentioned that before, right? Now, Cohen has also never publicly said whether Trump paid him back for that money given to Daniels. So, Giuliani basically went on the show and just diarrheaed all over the place, right? He contradicted everything both Cohen and the president had said. What a brilliant lawyer. Now, later in the interview, again, as you saw, he said Trump didn't know about the specifics, right? So basically, he expects us to believe that Donald Trump not only did not know why he was reimbursing Michael Cohen for $130,000, but also ended up paying him more in taxes and shit from those $35,000 or that $35,000 in retainer, right? That he was giving to Cohen for essentially not doing anything. Why would you retain a lawyer and pay him $35,000 if he's not fucking doing anything? That makes no sense, especially for somebody who has been shown to have been as stingy as Donald Trump. None of this makes any sense. And you know why? It's because it's all lies. It's all lies. I mean, look, here's the thing. Trump knew about this. I am almost dead certain that Donald Trump knew about this payment. That is why it's a problem. Now, let me get to a quote here from some of the experts on this. Paul Ryan, no, not that Paul Ryan, of the Campaign Legal Center, said, quote, Rudy Giuliani tonight put President Trump in legal peril for knowing and willful violations of campaign finance law. Because if he knew, then that is campaign finance law. Now, Giuliani seemingly thought he was doing President Trump a favor, but instead made Trump legal problems that much worse. Trump's own lawyer has now handed the DOJ evidence that President Trump committed criminal violations of federal law. Giuliani also said, after being asked by Hannity to clarify, that the money that was paid by his lawyer, the president reimbursed that over the period of several months. Hannity, as you saw, pressed Giuliani, saying that Cohen said he paid the money of his own without being asked. And he said, quote, I don't know. I haven't investigated that. No reason to dispute that. No reason to dispute his recollection. Why wouldn't you dispute that? You're his lawyer. You're supposed to know what the hell is going on. And look, again, we know that Donald Trump is a monumental liar and that he gets other people to lie on his behalf. Look, this, and I guess, I don't know, the bar is so low now, but somehow Rudy Giuliani has just has gone even lower than the bar. I don't know how that's possible. I don't know. I don't understand how that is possible, but he has done so. Giuliani is probably the worst legal representation anybody could ever hire. Amazing. This is absolutely amazing. But look, man, this revelation, this is going to put Trump into an even more world of hurt. Okay. Speaking of President Trump, let's get his reaction. President Trump is now in damage control mode after the disastrous Giuliani interview with both Fox and Friends and, most importantly, Sean Hannity. Now, Giuliani, who joined Trump's legal team last month, admitted to Hannity that the president had repaid $130,000 to longtime attorney Michael Cohen for a hush money payout to actress Stormy Daniels. Now, in a series of tweets, Trump said this. Well, Mr. Cohen, an attorney, received a monthly retainer, not from the campaign and having nothing to do with the campaign, from which he entered into, through reimbursement, a private contract between two parties known as a non-disclosure agreement, or NDA. These agreements are, he added, very common among celebrities and people of wealth. In this case, it is in full force and effect will be used in arbitration for damages against Miss Clifford, parentheses, Daniels. The agreement was used to stop the false and extortionist accusations made by her about an affair. Despite already having signed a detailed letter admitting that there was no affair, prior to its violation by Miss Clifford and her attorney, this was a private agreement. Money from the campaign or campaign contributions played no role in this transaction. So that is a bunch of tweets fired off by the president's account, but there is no way that he wrote this. There is absolutely zero chance that he had actually come up with these words. What are you talking about, Jeff? He's got the best words. No, he doesn't. There's no weirdly capitalized words, and the writing style is completely off. Aside from the one typo in roll, there's nothing in there to indicate that President Trump had actually anything to do with these tweets. Nonetheless, the claims that are in these tweets of the money being paid to Cohen for a retainer and that being used to form an NDA with Daniels, with Trump's knowledge, is actually very contradictory to everything that he has said before. So, look, this is a statement from the lawyers, essentially. Probably not Giuliani, because Giuliani's a fucking idiot. But whatever lawyer is there that's actually left, that is actually decent, they're the ones that are like, oh, quick, tweet this out. Set your story straight. Well, again, he had contradicted this story and had come up with his own story saying, I didn't know anything. I didn't know about any payment. Now he's completely changed it. It's fairly obvious that he is a liar and that he's been caught up in his own lie. Either he's lying or he's a fucking dumbass who doesn't remember what he said last month. Although considering who we're dealing with, the answer is likely both. Okay. One more on this situation, right? Okay. Moving on. Now, following the disaster that was the Giuliani interview on Sean Hannity's show, defenders of Donald Trump are starting to feel a little bit defeated and demoralized. Not a good example of that is Ken Cuccinelli. Now, you guys remember Ken Cuccinelli. He's the guy who wanted to outlaw blowjobs when he ran for governor of Virginia. Yeah, that's a popular platform. I wonder why he lost. Anyway, now in discussing Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani's decision to admit on Fox News that the president had reimbursed Michael Cohen for the Stormy Daniels payout, which, again, is something that he had contradicted before. His president said, no, I didn't know about any payment to Stormy Daniels. What are you talking about? Cuccinelli decided to say that he didn't understand what kind of legal strategy they were trying to employ here. In fact, let's get to that video. Watch.
What's relevant here is Rudy Giuliani is incriminating his client on national television for obstruction of justice.
Yeah, I would say that the way the president's legal team has operated through this whole thing has, just as a lawyer, been very curious to me. This is obviously part of a public strategy. And, we mentioned Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, I think, has been held out as a pretty lousy lawyer in public, although I think the latest revelations suggest, well, he wasn't just flying out there on his own anymore. And I frankly, it would be a hard thing to be the president's lawyer, because ultimately he's going to have to answer questions, and you know how undisciplined he is. And today just becomes one more installment of questions, right? And it's another dozen. And that's very difficult for the president to handle. It will be very difficult for the president to handle.
Well, maybe that's why they keep leaving. You keep seeing a shedding of talent around him because it gets hard to justify things that you know aren't true and you know are at best counterproductive.
Okay. So there's some things to break down in that. Now, I love when Cuomo says, well, that's why they keep leaving, right? But yeah, Trump hires the best people, and then they leave because they're like, what the fuck did I just get myself into? So they're gone. But on Cuccinelli, he's like, man, I just can't seem to figure out what they're trying to do. I mean, what kind of public strategy this is? It's got to be some kind of public strategy. No, it's the fact that they don't know what they're doing. They're all idiots. I know, no, but how can you say that? They're all so accomplished. I mean, you got a guy who was a former governor of New York. You got a guy who's president of the United States, ran a successful business. How can they be dumb? You ever heard of the concept of failing upwards? Yeah. So this entire administration is nothing more than a giant example of how someone can fail upwards if they're given millions of dollars of inheritance. But anyway, look, I like when he said, yeah, it must be difficult to be Trump's lawyer. Now, why would that be? Well, it's because he's an idiot. He can't keep his story straight. See, the problem with lies, right, and so many lies, is that in order to cover up your previous lies, you've got to tell even more lies. And so the lies start stacking on each other. And it gets to the point where you can't even remember what the truth is. I think we are at that point. We have arrived there. And even Cuccinelli, who I have numerous problems with, is like, yeah, man, I got no idea what the hell they're thinking. His lawyers are really probably pretty dumb. They're even dumber than me, and I tried to ban oral sex. Now we got one more video here from the Cooch. And he's going to talk about his reaction to what Giuliani said about the FBI agents. Because, remember, the Republican Party is supposed to be the party of law and order. They're supposed to respect law enforcement, right? Well, the FBI is law enforcement. But Giuliani, he didn't think that anymore. No, he actually called them stormtroopers. Let's watch.
And the idea that Rudy Giuliani, who has been living off his, 9/11 celebrity for all this time, is now calling FBI agents stormtroopers is really loathsome.
Ken, what do you think?
Yeah, I get the spin. I really do not like to see anybody on any side of an argument wander into language from the Nazi Germany era. It does nothing constructive to help the discussion. Nothing constructive to help the discussion. And as his lawyer, as the president's lawyer, Giuliani and all the others, Dowd before him and so forth, they do not have the option of just coming out on TV and making up a story. They have ethical obligations to have a basis for what they're saying. So, this may be how they're presenting it now, but the contrast and involving two lawyers, Cohen on one side and Giuliani on another, does not help the legal team, their own credibility separate from the president.
Credibility, right? No, it is hilarious that anyone would think that either of these lawyers, Michael Cohen or Rudy Giuliani, have any sort of credibility. And again, this is a guy who wrote off his 9/11 fame for years. Not 9/11. This is a guy who was like noun, verb, 9/11, right? And used that to actually get votes using that tragedy. But look, credibility is now in such short supply on Trump's legal team. I mean, again, we've seen John Dowd. John Dowd, gone, right? Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb's also gone. He's like, dude, fuck this. I can't keep up with this, right? You're going to go after, you're going to attack Mueller. You're going to do this. You're not going to sit down with him. You're going to do any of that. You're not going to cooperate with Mueller whatsoever. And while you're under investigation, well, then I can't help you. I'm out of here. Like, you want to sit there and fight and think you're going to outsmart Mueller when you're going to play three-dimensional chess? You think that's going to work? That's not going to work. You're an idiot. He's going to run circles around you. But look, man, Cobb, Dowd, none of his lawyers can control their client. Again, earlier, we talked about how Cohen was wiretapped after his raid. And Donald Trump's like, you know what I'm going to do? You know it's a smart idea? I'm going to call up Michael Cohen after he had been raided by the FBI. Even though that there was the possibility, and again, that's confirmed, that he was wiretapped. Still going to call him up. The guy's a grade A moron. You cannot be stupider than Donald Trump. And, like, you know it's bad when your own supporters are like, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what the strategy here is. It's pretty dumb. There is no strategy. These lawyers are flailing because they have no idea what they're doing. And even if they did have a sound strategy, there's no telling when Trump could come along and blow the whole thing up with a stupid tweet. This is the reality of working and dealing with Donald Trump. He's going to blow himself up. And you know what? It's going to be a public spectacle. So everybody, get your popcorn. Something's going to happen soon. This is unsustainable. All right. Jesus. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We've got Hillary Clinton and the socialists. I know, interesting. And we actually have a good story to end out the day. So stay right here. Round the Nation. We'll be right back. everybody back in the show, Around the Nation here. We're back. Thank you. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share if you haven't already. We've got a couple more stories. So we're going to do that. And let me see if I have any super chat messages. No, but if you want to support the show, that's one way you can do it. I heavily, now I can't think of the word. So, you know what? I have the best words. I have the greatest words. I just can't remember them. So I suggest that you guys use the super chat. That really, really does help us. All right. Anyway, so let's move on. Oh, speaking of waffles, right? I'm looking at the chat here for a second before I get into it. And I actually just started watching. This is related to waffles. I actually started watching Legion. So I heard from a lot of friends it's pretty good. And one of the things that, the main character, David, likes is waffles. So I know it's kind of a weird thing, but I think of weird things during the show. All right, anyway. Let's move on. Let's talk about Hillary Clinton. Okay. I know we've had that caption a million times. Now, Hillary Clinton continues to blame other things for her loss to Donald Trump in 2016. In fact, in a Wednesday interview with Time Brand's executive Alan Murray, she finally admits that maybe her economic policies were a little bit to blame for her loss. Oh my God. Is she saying that her centrist policies were not something that gets people excited about voting in a presidential election against somebody who is running as a faux populist on the right? Well, let's get to that quote. She said, quote, "It is hard to know, but I mean if you're in the Iowa caucuses and 41% of Democrats are socialists or self-described socialists, and I'm asked, are you a capitalist? And I say, yes, I am. But with appropriate regulation and appropriate accountability. That probably gets lost in the, oh my gosh, she's a capitalist." Look, man, it's like, she's there, but she's not. Like, she's not quite there. So close. Look, there was something, okay, so you want to talk about her economic policies. Wonderful. Let's talk about the economic policies, right? So basically, she's a holdover from President Obama. Basically the same kinds of policies, a little bit of a tiny raise in the minimum wage. Yes, it does help people. But basically more, Wall Street, a little bit of deregulation in there, but maybe a little bit of regulation somewhere else, some piecemeal regulation here and there, or et cetera, right? Now, compared to Republicans and their economic policies, well, look, we've been living under Donald Trump, and I can say with absolute 100% certainty that her policies, which were a continuation of President Obama's policies, were much better. Yeah, I know. I said it, right? That's because what we're looking at is no change versus a garbage fire. Donald Trump and the Republican Party have basically taken a match to the economy and we're like, there you go. Look, here we have a $1.9 trillion hole in the deficit. And here's what they're going to do. Republicans are now saying, you know what we got to do to close that deficit? We're going to have to cut your Medicare. We're going to have to cut your food stamps. You're going to have to cut your Social Security. We're going to have to cut all those quote-unquote entitlement programs. So, yeah, look, if you do want to do a comparison, then what was the status quo before is better than the status quo now. It's just, I guess, it's economic ruin at a slower pace instead of hitting the gas and saying, seatbelts are for commies. So that's what's going on here, right? Now, look, some policies she decided to try to go a little bit slightly to the left to meet Sanders sort of halfway in the center, right? Which, look, Bernie Sanders, they paint him as some sort of giant leftist, but really he's more center left than anything. Jeremy Corbyn is actually far more progressive than Bernie Sanders is. But when it looks in our when we look at our context here, in the Overton window here in America, everybody's like, oh my God, Bernie Sanders is so radical, he's insane. No, he's not. He's actually center left, and he comes armed with good, workable policy, right? Now, the thing is, when Hillary Clinton started going his direction on some of the issues, one of the main problems that we have as progressives is that we didn't trust that she actually meant that, because she has a history of duplicity. And that's one of the big problems, right? Duplicity. Like, hey, you say one thing, but you do another. Yeah, you talk about, hey, let's go after income inequality, but you favor big banks who happen to exacerbate that economic inequality. So, look, those are the trust issue is obviously enormous, right? Now, on healthcare, for example, Medicare for all, that is the answer. That's the way that we need to go. Every other country has proven that has a Medicare for all system that is a superior healthcare system, not only in patient outcomes, but when it comes to spending as well. So we have all this publicly available data. We've got all these different countries that have done Medicare for all, that have done some sort of single-payer system, and they're wildly successful. We look at those and we think, why don't we have those? Hillary Clinton looks at those and says, never, ever going to happen, right? She fought against free college for all. Yeah, she did some sort of limited free college plan. That's what she was talking about. But she's like, I don't want free community college and free public university for everyone because I don't want Donald Trump's kids going to college. I remember that argument. But wait, what rich person puts their kids in public university? None that I would know of. Well, to be fair, I don't know any rich people, but most rich people tend to put their kids in a private university, in a private school. But anyway, and look, I don't even care. Yeah, so, okay, if we have free college for all, then am I going to be up in arms if somebody who is a little bit more well-to-do goes to a publicly funded university? No, I don't care. A right to an education for everybody, I believe, is a right. The right to a good, fair education that does not leave you in debt. I believe that's a right. Hillary Clinton obviously does not. So look, on policy, yes, she was center right on policy. But she says, no, the problem is that I wasn't socialist enough. So understand that this is more red baiting, right? And here's the thing. She says that she comes from that framing because, look, she's entrenched in that system. The system that made her family and her fabulously wealthy and actually gave her an immeasurable amount of power inside the DNC and inside the Democratic Party. She and her family were power brokers. They were major figures, right? So she wasn't going to go against that system. That's the system right now that's been crushing so many people, so many regular Americans, so many working people. And she wasn't going to do anything to challenge that system. So that's why a lot of people, even the, so-called socialists, whatever, especially the so-called socialists, which are actually more Democratic socialists or social democrats along the lines of Bernie Sanders, because she doesn't use that description properly. She doesn't properly address what the people who supported Bernie actually are, progressives. She thinks, oh no, they're hardcore leftist socialists. And I'm not one of those. I'm a capitalist. So, but social democracy is along the lines of FDR, who brought us the most popular programs in American existence. But anyway, I feel like I'm rambling. But look, there was going to be absolutely no change or very little change under Hillary Clinton. Just more status quo. And so, but in her words, no, it's the fact that I was a capitalist, that I was a, normal American capitalism. That's why I was rejected by young people. In fact, she actually addressed this. She said, quote, earlier at the Shared Value Leadership Summit in New York, Clinton has said the reputation of capitalism is pretty much in tatters for young people, according to Fortune magazine. Well, look, there's a reason for that. It's because capitalism... okay, it's actually not because capitalism is failing. I know Jimmy Dore, he's like, capitalism is failing. I actually don't agree with that. You know why? Because I think that everything that's going on with our system and all the failings inside of capitalism are by design. This is not a bug, it's a feature. Money flows to the top. It flows to the owners of capital who exploit workers for low wages. How do they get more money at the top? They starve it from the bottom. They take it from the bottom. So when they depress wages or when they keep wages artificially low, well, that helps them. They're not at all worried about workers. When they make sure that their taxes are low, when they make sure that they have less regulation, that helps them. And look, most of their money, and for a consumer economy, this is like sort of the death spiral for a consumer economy, is to have all that money and that flow to the top and to have so much income inequality. Well, they're not worried about that because all their money is tied up in the Wall Street slot machine, where they make money from money. They make money from speculation about things that aren't actually there, that don't actually exist. You make money from money. And so they're not worried about real world things. They're just reinvesting. I mean, look, one of the big problems with the Trump tax cuts, and there are so many that I've laid out on the show, but one of the big problems is that they took that money that they saved, and guess what? They went and basically repurchased their own stock. And that, of course, helps their stock value go up. It artificially inflates the value of their company, who is not making more things. They're not more valuable. They haven't added more to the economy. No, all they did is they said, I'm going to pump money into my stock prices so that I make more money, so that it's more valuable to other people on Wall Street. But it's not more valuable. It's not more valuable at all. But that's the system that we have. And look, the system itself encourages rigging of the rules to get an advantage over your competitors. And again, we allow that. And we also allow the bribing of elected officials. These are not bugs in the system. These are features of this system. And right now, our system is incredibly out of whack. And young people notice, they see that. And they're like, everything is so incredibly fucked up. And it has to do with greed. It has to do with money and politics. We grew up in the middle of a recession, and we see the system for what it is, right? And look, the system has been like this at least from the 70s, maybe even further before. But in the 70s and 80s, as this was starting to happen, as this downward, this great, transference of wealth, the great disparity was starting to begin. People were distracted by cheap credit, easy access to credit and credit cards. And so, we didn't really feel the pinch when our wages were getting stagnated, when our money was getting stolen out of our wallets. We didn't notice this at all because, you know what? I don't have the money. Want to just get a credit card, then I get a brand new color TV. But millennials, we see all that this is happening. And look, even back in the 70s and 80s, yes, you could actually still buy and afford a house on one income. Now, it's impossible to even afford an apartment on a minimum wage salary, even if you're working full time. So, our system is just, it's so incredibly messed up. And the level of consumerism that had started, during this great disparity in the 70s and 80s and continuing through the 90s and things like that, blinded so many people to it. But millennials, look, we're not buying the current system, a lot of us. But iPhones, you guys got iPhones. What are you talking about? Those are communications devices that also allow everybody to stay connected. They're great tools for activism. Social media is a great tool for activism and connecting to other people. You have cameras that can catch pretty much any kind of terrible action that you want on camera, protests and police doing terrible things, these are an incredible tool. So it's not just about Instagramming your lunch, which, yes, a lot of people do, and I don't quite understand that. But nonetheless, these are important tools. So, yes, it is important to have one because it can do so much. But anyway, now look, Hillary Clinton, back on her for a moment and her defense of the system. Look, would she have done some regulation? Yeah, maybe a little bit, right? She would have done it here and there, just like President Obama, but she wouldn't have actually solved the underlying problems with the system. Would have done something akin to Dodd-Frank, maybe something close to it or a little bit less, or it strengthened Dodd-Frank instead of weakened it, like we have under Trump, which was already weak before. But she would have called it historic. Oh, look at this historic Wall Street reform. Now, that would have only slowed down the decline in our system. The real way to fix our system is to get money out of politics. Money is the root of all evil. For example, you've got a profit motive in all these different things that shouldn't be there. There shouldn't be a profit motive in healthcare. There shouldn't be a profit motive in education. There shouldn't be a profit motive in infrastructure. These things should be public. Again, some of the most popular programs in America are public. You even have some places that right now are running public internet. And it's faster and it's more competitive. And in fact, these companies are like, you're too competitive. Well, we're going to have to shut you down because we're not going to be able to make as much of a profit. But wait, there are people, there are customers, there are consumers that are actually benefiting from faster, more reliable, cheaper internet. That's good for the people, but not so good for the giant corporations. So you have all these private systems that depend on keeping these things expensive and out of reach for so many Americans. And again, that's so true in healthcare. I recently read a story about where a woman got a cut on her ear, went to the emergency room, got an ice pack and an ace bandage, and got billed for $5,000. Just for going through the door and getting an ice pack and a bandage. $5,000 bill. That is our capitalist system right now. So that's the problem here, okay? And until you address that, and unless you plan to address that and show that you're willing to address that, nobody's going to trust you at all. So maybe, and here's some advice for Hillary Clinton, maybe instead of blaming the voters for not supporting a flawed system, a system that is flawed all the way to hell, that you should maybe listen to the people that you want to represent. But of course, remember that Hillary Clinton never wanted to go after the progressive vote. She wanted to try and court Republicans. So, and that is a gamble that she absolutely lost. So, look, maybe instead of trying to become a Republican, you should actually try being a real Democrat, like the people that you're supposed to represent. I think I'm fairly clear on this. Okay. So let's go to one more story here. All right. I hate having to keep relitigating 2016, but god damn it, she makes me do it. Are you sexist? You're such a sexist for saying that. No, she's literally asking for it in this case. Okay, anyway. So, good news. The two African-American men arrested in a Philadelphia Starbucks have reached a settlement with the city and a promise from local officials to set up a program that would benefit young entrepreneurs. Now, this stems from the story where we talked about earlier last month. There was a video showing Rashawn Nelson and Dante Robinson getting approached by police and arrested for sitting at a Starbucks. So they weren't causing a scene. They weren't causing a ruckus. They were just sitting there at a Starbucks. It's not a crime. Now, at least, normal people wouldn't consider that a crime. However, the store manager was like, how dare you? How dare you black people sit in my store and not buy anything? In fact, he said that he called the police because they refused to buy anything or leave. Again, why should they leave? I mean, look, it shouldn't be a crime to come in there and, as they said, they were waiting for a business associate. There's a lot of coffee shops where people will come in and they will meet with people, okay? For example, job interviews and things like that. People have done that before without necessarily having to go and buy a coffee, right? Now, apparently, at this Starbucks in Philadelphia, you are not allowed to sit there while black. So that's the problem here. Now, Nelson and Robinson said after the arrest that they feared for their lives while in police custody. And there is reason for that. There's precedent for that. Because, look, a lot of people end up mysteriously getting hurt or killed. I think of the story of Sandra Bland, where she was disrespectful to a police officer, right? And ended up dying in jail. I mean, that's insanity, right? And look, there are other stories where white people basically use the police to get black people off their lawn, even if they're not doing anything that's against the law. And I love talking about the African-American police officer who was picking up bullet shells after, in a crime scene, right? Trying to collect evidence. And somebody called the cops on him. Said there's a suspicious black man dressed like a police officer shining lights in people's windows. The guy's a police officer. But again, people are insane. Like, white people, calm the fuck down. If you see a black person, they're not out there to try to kill you or rob you or rape you, all that stuff, right? No, they're people living their lives, right? But anyway, now, the problem here, and we've seen this in other many circumstances, right, is that this can lead to deadly consequences. And not only that, but just calling the police on black people doing nothing is a super shitty thing to do. So don't do that. And look, the result of this is these guys ended up spending hours in jail without even being charged for a crime. Isn't that supposed to be illegal in this country? I mean, there was no crime, and yet they spent time in jail. Now, of course, in response to this, a lot of people were pissed, understandably. And due to the backlash, Starbucks, they said, we're going to take a day out for bias training. Well, look, to be fair, that one day of bias training is not going to erase the years of racism in this country. Everybody has their own biases. Everybody even has racial biases. But you have to see that you have a bias. And a lot of people don't see or don't know. Even people are like, what are you talking about? I'm not racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body. You know what? Everybody has their own biases. I've, had to deal with my own biases. And everybody has. And when you acknowledge that you have an inherent bias against a particular or any other particular set of people, then you start to realize how you can eliminate that bias. And so it's really important to just get to know yourself in that way, to understand that you have a bias and what that leads you to do. Okay? And it leads you to call cops on people who are doing literally nothing. But anyway, now, Starbucks also, the CEO of Starbucks, I should say, Kevin Johnson, went to Philadelphia to personally apologize to both Nelson and Robinson. Now, that said, let's get to the settlement, right? So, a lot of people are probably thinking, they're going to milk Starbucks for everything they got, right? No, that's actually not what happened. Nelson and Robinson's settlement actually does reflect their character. They have each decided to settle for a symbolic $1 apiece for themselves, and a promise that the city will put $200,000 towards a program to help young people start businesses. Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney said in outlining the agreement with the men's lawyer, quote, "I am pleased to have resolved the potential claims against the city in this productive manner." So this was an incident that evoked a lot of pain in our city and put us under a national spotlight for unwanted reasons. And look, I love the settlement. I think this is great. $200,000 for youth apprenticeship programs or entrepreneurship programs. That's wonderful. You're actually taking what was a negative thing and actually putting it towards something positive. So anybody who was worried about taxpayer money, going to these people, I was like, oh, whatever. A little bit of a weird tangent, but okay. Anyway, so look, this is a pretty good settlement, and I like it. I like it a lot. I like what they did, but I think to avoid future problems like this is we need to change policing in this country. I mean, look, they shouldn't just arrest black people because someone complains. They actually need to do their jobs. They should need to go and protect people's rights. I mean, and to make sure that they only take that action if there's an actual crime committed. So police need to be retrained. And regular people need to realize their inherent bias so that they can, that they don't call the cops for somebody or for people who are just sitting while black or standing while black or selling CDs while black, So that's what needs to change. And hopefully we can eventually get to that point. Okay. I think we're good. I think we're good on that. All right. That's it for today's show. Thank you guys for joining me around the nation. Make sure to tune in tomorrow. We'll be same time, same place, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 Pacific. So make sure to tune in then. That said, thank you all. Thank you for the super chat. It's a good way to support the show. Another way to support the show is to go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/TYTNation. That helps us a ton. Okay, that's it. Love you guys, and remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. We'll see y'all tomorrow.